Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the environmentally conscious riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Trudeau's Justice Minister says internet content should undergo the same safety scrutiny as children's toys. They think that we are children. The NDP Liberal government wants to pick and choose which pieces on social media and other internet platforms should be pulled if the government deems the content harmful to the public. In other words, if the content is harmful to the Liberal Party of Canada. The Liberals kept the election interference by the Communists who controlled China in 2019 and 2021 out of the news because it worked in their favor. Now, they want unbridled power to pull the content from the internet if it makes them look bad. Just like they classify any documents that expose their corruption, just like the green slush fund documents, like the documents pertaining to the transfer of deadly viruses from the National Microbiology Laboratory. Of course, this is a somewhat of a distraction from the grave matter at hand, which is the cost of living. The Liberals want you complaining about censorship as they tax you more, making it even harder to pay the high prices for streaming for those who can even afford streaming now. They would rather hear Canadians complaining about anything other than their standard of living, which has diminished over the last 9 years. Trudeau has broken our country. It's timely that the Special Committee on the Canada-People's Republic of China relationship has tabled its report on the case of the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg. Canadians can recall that this government refused to hand over documents demanded by Parliament so we could learn what actually happened at the lab. This government was so determined to ignore the will of Parliament, it took the former Liberal Speaker to court. That was unprecedented. It was an unprecedented attack on parliamentary democracy. Not only has that never happened before in Canada, but it might also have been the first for any parliamentary democracy. And that's how far the Liberals were willing to go to keep the truth from Canadians. Thanks to the Prime Minister calling his pandemic spreading election, all the work to hold them accountable had to restart. When the Liberals returned with even fewer votes and fewer seats, they had no choice but to seek a deal. The government would hand over the documents to MPs who were willing to agree to be permanently gagged about what they saw. The MPs would review the redactions the government claimed were necessary for national security, and if they disagreed with the government, the redactions would be reviewed by a panel of arbiters to determine how the information would be made public. That process was what allowed our colleagues to produce the report on what happened at the Winnipeg lab. And I want to thank the members of the committee for their work. The government had been smearing anyone who dared to talk about the lab or ask questions. This report reveals we had more than enough reasons to be concerned. In August of 2018, CSIS met with bureaucrats responsible for the security of the lab. CSIS communicated its concerns about the two scientists at the center of the controversy. The bureaucrats did nothing. In September of 2018, those same bureaucrats learned that one of the scientists had been listed as an inventor of a patent in China that may have contained information produced in Canada. The bureaucrats did nothing. In October of 2018, those same bureaucrats learned that two individuals from China who had been sponsored to work at the National Laboratory by the two disgraced scientists, attempted to leave the national lab with 10 tubes in 2 bags. That same month, one of the scientists took a trip to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and it was during that time that she signed up for the notorious 1,000 Talents program. Members of that program have been arrested, tried, and convicted of espionage in the United States. The program is a major pipeline for communists, the ones who control China, to steal technology. Near the end of October in 2018, her husband tried to leave the lab with 2 styrofoam containers, which he insisted were empty. The bureaucrats did nothing. It wasn't until December 11th, 5 months after CSIS first spoke with officials at the Public Health and National Lab, that the bureaucrats decided to brief the president of Public Health. So what did the top bureaucrat at Public Health do when presented with these troubling facts? She does what this government does best. She hired some outside consultants to conduct a fact-finding study. The consultants handed in the reports 3 months later on March 23, 2019. Their recommendation? An administrative investigation. While the bureaucrats were busy hiring consultants to conduct studies to recommend investigations, the 2 communist agents slipped out live samples of Ebola and Hennepin viruses to the Wuhan Institute of Virology on March 31st. It wasn't until the end of May in 2019 that public health bureaucrats picked up the phone and called the RCMP. 2 more months passed before the scientists were escorted from the lab by the RCMP in July of 2019. Public Health did not officially terminate their employment until January of 2021. So we were paying the salary for 2 communist agents while the government told them to sit at home and wait for further instructions. Unsurprisingly, the scientist spies did not obey, and they moved back to China, out of the reach of Canada's legal system. To sum it up, CSIS warned senior government officials of a threat posed by agents working on the behalf of the communists who control China. The senior government officials downplayed the concerns until it all blew up in their faces. No one bothers to brief the Liberals, or the Liberals don't bother to read their briefs. This is the same brand of incompetence that led the public inquiry into foreign interference, which brings us here today with a paralyzed Parliament. The Liberals don't care because now they can bring in new taxes without scrutiny through regulations. In a show of bravado, the day before the U.S. election, Trudeau dispatched his proud socialist venture capitalist Minister of the Environment to announce the 3rd carbon tax. The first carbon tax is the one you see on the bills you receive directly. It is set to quadruple by 2031, adding 61 cents a liter to the cost of gas. The first carbon tax is also hidden in every step of production, manufacturing, and transportation stages for everything you buy. The second carbon tax, often referred to as Carbon Tax 2.0, are the regulations from the new fuel standards. Carbon Tax 2 is what reduces your mileage and ruins your engine with the increase of ethylene being spiked into your gasoline. The third carbon tax is the cap. Carbon Tax 3.0 caps the emissions on getting oil out of the oil sands. It limits the energy used to bring the decayed organic material from deep below Earth's surface to the top by capping the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by burning natural gas to make the steam. Carbon dioxide is a clear, colorless, odorless gas. It's not poisonous. That's carbon monoxide. The carbon tax is based on thin air. The carbon tax does nothing for the environment. And the same goes for the second carbon tax. And it's the same for the third carbon tax. The only thing Trudeau's 3 carbon taxes do is take money from your pocket and put it into someone else's. One of the things he does with your money is to pay influencers on social media to make you think you're helping the environment when you pay extra at the pumps. The influencers also surface at election time to endorse Trudeau's hand that feeds them. So far, Trudeau's carbon tax has doubled the cost of housing and driven 1 in 5 Canadians to food banks. And now, 3.0 is going to ground transportation to a halt for many Canadians. People will lose their jobs, starting with those in Alberta, before moving east, and then it'll send billions of dollars to dictators overseas. So yesterday, while everyone was focused on events down south, Trudeau quietly published the mandatory regulatory statement. The Liberals admitted it would slash jobs and weaken the economy. But they're hoping none of the legacy media pay attention to the document. Costs for food will go up even more for all of us. Restaurants across Canada will have to raise their prices. Fewer people will eat out. Food servers will lose hours. More people will lose their homes and have to live in tents or lean-tos. More people will turn to drugs out of despair to kill the pain and die. We need a carbon tax election to save Canada. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.